and welcome back to Team Coaching Zone. I am Adam Shue, and I'm super excited for today's episode that we have for you. So, along with me, of course, is our wonderful Dr. Krister Lowe. How are you doing today, Krister?
Awesome. Great to be here. Very excited about this conversation about the metaverse. So,
yeah, I've been
great to
waiting
have
so long for
Carlos
this.
with us too. Yeah.
Yep. And then also we have as a special guest today, someone who's an expert in the metaverse himself. And we thought it would be very appropriate to have Carlos Paulet join us. He is actually a coach, and many of the sessions that he does, he takes groups of people through the metaverse, and he's been doing this for the last, 20 years, I think you said to me last time?
No, since 2016.
2016. So, Carlos, why don't
the
you tell me?
metaverse was around back in 2000, right? So.
Yeah, well, I know VR has been around for a while, but I didn't know how long Carlos has been doing it. So, actually, this is a good opportunity. Carlos, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe introduce yourself to our audience?
Greetings and salutations. I'm excited to be here talking about the metaverse. And, I would like to start with, when you say 20 years, it's funny because actually in 1994, I recall writing a term paper in college about the future of VR and the impact it would have on our society. And back then, VR was very experimental, and we're talking about very pixelated images or very cartoonish graphics in the day, and I didn't even get to experience it back then. I was already excited about it. So naturally, when the opportunity came up, I was there. You could say I've always been a bit of an explorer since my early beginnings, and part of it is just the way I was raised. I was born in Peru. I only lived there till I was 4, Dominican Republic until I was 12, Brazil till I was 18. And throughout that period, always went to these American schools, so I wouldn't be held back in transition from one country to another. And always, the nice thing about those schools is there was at least 30 cultures represented at each one of them, which just sort of gave you that global aspect of life. Since then, I lived in the U.S. for undergrad and graduate school. I've lived in Spain for 5 years, Haiti for 1 year. So I've sort of been around. And when people ask me where I'm from, my usual reply is I'm homeless. But it was always a natural tendency to explore. I've always been heavily interested in technology. So when the first consumer-based VR headsets started being available, and I believe those started out with HTC Vive in around 2016, I was first on the list to order one and start playing with it. And then little by little, that encroached into my client practice.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for giving an intro about your background. And one keyword probably our audience probably have noticed is VR and a lot of tech terms. And of course, our show today is talking about teams working in the metaverse. So there's this concept of something called a metaverse. I thought it would be good to start off with, let's just go to the basics, because I know a lot of people, my colleagues who I work with in technology are also scratching their head going, what is this metaverse thing? We hear it all the time, but they don't seem to quite understand it. And again, I'm going to defer to an expert here and maybe ask, could we give people an idea, what is the metaverse? Like, what is this? Is this something I can buy? Is this something I can just visit somewhere?
Well, besides quoting Morpheus from The Matrix, the wool that's been pulled over your eyes, the metaverse has many definitions nowadays. For the most part, I would consider it still an attempt. We're still not there, but it's an attempt to create a shared world where different platforms that engage in the virtual world can join and share applications and all be connected. So that at any space or any point anywhere in the globe, you can put on a headset or an AR device and join in with people all around and exchange a lot more than, for example, you can do over a Zoom call, like be a physical presence, use whiteboards, play sports together, go on adventures, create together or co-create. And it really is that. Microsoft calls it a mesh. Meta calls it the metaverse. They changed their name to Meta, which tells you how strong their intent is on building this. And those are the primary drivers, even though there are others, to make this a reality. I would say it's still not there, but it's getting there.
Yeah. And Carlos, is this going to be like kind of the next version of the internet, where right now we kind of use email and we get on video calls and all that, but is this just like built on the internet, and is it like the next upgrade? Or because this is like a whole nother level of immersion, right, and sensory experience when it's all virtual.
It absolutely is. And as the technology keeps on growing, it's going to become less obtrusive. I would say that one of the biggest drawbacks today for the metaverse becoming mainstream fully is the fact that you're still wearing a relatively heavy headset on your head. And even though we've gone to the point where you don't need cables and everything, or a gaming computer to run it, it's still not like a pair of sunglasses that you can just put in and jump in. And when we get there, I think this type of fusion between reality and virtual reality will be more common. And it brings to mind early attempts. Do you remember Google Glass?
Yes.
It came out, and there was like this whole, this is going to be a big fail because it's going to be a whole bunch of peeping Toms walking around with AR glasses to a bar and checking who everyone else is or recording video. But we've come a long way since then. And nowadays, people wearing technology is becoming more acceptable. Within standards. But it is going to be to that point where I can imagine a future where we'll also use a lot more holograms. Microsoft Meta is working in that sense. And nowadays, with certain technology, you can be in a virtual reality meeting room where you are in an avatar and the other person you're talking to is a hologram of themselves. And they're projecting from their phone or somewhere else. So it's really interesting where this is going. But absolutely. I think it's going to be a new wave or a new way of doing things, even commerce.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you did mention the Google Glass, because just recently I saw a video of somebody's interpretation of Apple's Glass. So apparently they're working on eyeglass as well. And it's not going to be as obvious as the Google Glass, you could tell. But actually Amazon already has a glass out there, and they're so everybody's competing on getting AR, VR into the market. And I think we're getting close, as you mentioned, to that tipping point. So, the geeks among us probably know it as the technology adoption curve, or some people know crossing the chasm, right? So once there's enough people that adopt, the majority will start coming in. And that's what we're hoping for with this metaverse. So what's interesting with how you describe the metaverse, and again, you're right, everybody has a different definition of it. There's this concept, actually, Microsoft has created a space for teams to start working together. And of course, our focus here is about how do we work with teams in a way that is going to put them at the most effective level possible to do the things they need to do. And of course, with the pandemic, that's already happened and is still happening. We've all had to shift to some type of metaverse already. It's called Zoom World. And
well, it's Zoom Plus, because now it's Zoom plus Miro or Mural,
yes.
or other some kind of collaborative technology. But I imagine what Microsoft is cooking up and the kind of stuff you do, Carlos, it's all integrated in one experience. So it's not two-dimensional. It's still two-dimensional, right? What most people are doing.
Yeah. So my question is, it seems that it is working. Well, obviously it's been working for myself, working from home for 2 years. The question is, what else will it bring us? Because Zoom Plus, we experience, but with the metaverse, what other things are of benefit over just something like a Zoom and a Miro and a couple of added tools?
Now, it's interesting because quite often when people think about the metaverse and they think about people meeting in VR, they picture having a similar conversation to a Zoom call, except your avatars are there and you're more interactive. And sure, that is one use. It's great. It's a lot of fun. It brings a new dimension to the interaction, which Zoom can get old after a while. So
We're
it's
all Zoom fatigued. So
Yeah.
maybe we're all ready to kind of shift to the metaverse next,
well, just a quick tidbit. I've had coaching sessions where I'll be with a coachee in a boardroom type environment, have a whiteboard where I can just grab a pen with my hands literally and take notes, and look out the window and be over at the surface of Mars. But at the same time, if we get tired of just talking, we can conjure up a ping pong table and play ping pong against each other and actually work up a sweat while we converse. So it adds these extra dimensions to fun. But it really goes beyond, and this is a great question, Adam. It goes beyond that application of that type of workspace. As a matter of fact, in the last year, 48% of manufacturing companies in the United States have decided that that the VR will become mainstream in the organization within the next 43 years. And one of the reasons is that they have discovered that training that incorporates VR reduces work-related injuries by about 43%. And what does this mean? Like, instead of, and this is something interesting, the country that's leading this. So a lot of people, we look at it as the office workspace, but in the manufacturing workspace, it's actually become more of a reality these days. And interestingly enough, the country that's leading this charge is China, which has the highest level of VR manufacturing at 51%.
Wow.
Which is fantastic. But what does this mean? Like, in a practical situation, what it means is you can have someone that has an issue with the machine in Shanghai, and you have an expert in Vancouver. And that expert in Vancouver will put on his AR enhanced VR headset, and so will the person in Shanghai. And that person in Shanghai will show them the machine, and they'll literally be sitting in that same room with the real world machine in front of them, while the other person guides them and says,
right,
all right, you need to pull this lever over here, open this panel, switch this wire for this one. And they're literally just save themselves
real-time training and coaching, hands-on, right?
24-hour trip.
That's really cool.
So it's, and those are some of the applications, but when it comes to training for emergencies, for evacuations, training for hot fire drills, and you're doing that in a VR environment where you can simulate smoke, fire, explosions. Sorry, you just died. VR is okay if that happens, because you messed up on whatever the training module is. Then it really becomes useful. So that's one of the places where it's been growing the most. Now, when I say it's not mainstream, currently there are about 170 million users worldwide.
Wow.
Now put that into macro scope.
Not small potatoes,
small peanuts, but it's, as a market, it's expected to grow to over 209 billion by the end of this year. So it's going there.
Right.
Wow.
So something that was mentioned, and thank you for sharing that insight with us. I never even thought of it as the new horizon for manufacturing to use it as a simulation tool. But kind of going back to the idea of the Zoom burnout, do you believe that because it is so interactive, and the way you just described it about, like, because in the Zoom world, which we're on right now, we can't move, we're static, we're stuck in this fixed point. And I love the concept of being able to actually have a walking conversation together on the surface of Mars. That would just be mind-boggling. But given that you've been in the metaverse for a while, longer than Krista and I have, is there a limitation of how long you can endure that type of environment? Because as human beings, unless the whole metaverse is to make you feel like there is no difference between reality and the metaverse, is there a limitation of how long you should be in there?
Currently, I believe there is. I'm not sure what it is. That's everyone's. I think it goes the same way as what you mentioned, Zoom fatigue before. There will be VR fatigue as well. And one thing that's important is nothing beats reality. VR nowadays is beautiful at simulating I'll give you an example. You can go to Google Earth VR nowadays. That same Google Earth platform that we can use to walk around the Champs-Élysées in Paris, you can do that in VR,
Right.
and it's beautiful, but you can't smell it, you can't feel it. It's still artificial, but it's a
Mm.
beautiful place. And I actually use that even as a tool whenever I'm traveling. Let's say I have a meeting in 2 weeks in Chicago, and I'm going to stay at a hotel I'm unfamiliar with. I'll actually step outside that hotel in VR, walk around the block, see where the nearest 7-Eleven is, see where, my points of interest are around that hotel. And when I get there, I'm familiar with it. It's like, oh, yeah, I've been here before. I know this place, but it's not the same. Also, because of current technology limitations, I mean, if you're using Meta Oculus Quest 2 nowadays, you have pretty decent VR,
Yeah.
and it's wireless, so you're not, and it's less heavy than other headsets. So you can walk around in space, have that freedom of movement, but you're still wearing a headset on your head. After I'd say 40 some minutes or so, it even starts feeling a little warm. I mean, when I'm in VR for an extended period of time, I'm running my AC to maintain cool. If you're into higher end VR headsets, for example, another one that I have is an Valve Index, which is bigger field of view, which is a big deal because you don't actually feel like you're looking at the world through a submarine
goggles or something. Yeah.
Or something, and you feel it's more immersive. It's also higher frame rates and definition, but you're tied to a cable, which you can still move around. But if you spin, you're going to tangle yourself. It's inevitable. So it's not there yet. It really has to become smaller, less obtrusive. And I'll give you some examples from my coaching experience when I first started. I started on a more rudimentary headset in 2016. And when I first started, I started because I was interested in gaming, not because I was thinking this is going to be a work application. For me, it was an opportunity to jump into a Star Wars type spaceship, feel like I was inside with a few bogies down.
Right.
But it just so happened that I got in touch with a company that was looking for coaching, and they were a gaming industry. They were in the gaming industry, and their leaders were interested in coaches that could work with VR. So, the minute they reached out, I was like, "Yeah, I have a VR headset. I actually have one built by your company. How about we, and we started working like that." And there are some nuances. There are some areas that differentiate between working in person. And one of those is you can tell body language to an extent by the way the person's moving around, but you cannot see facial reactions. You can fake them. I mean, some of these applications have buttons where you can press and say smile, and your avatar will smile. But that's actually coming. Actually, this year, we know that the new headsets are working with facial recognition and monitoring technology to allow you to see the avatar's expression. Also, avatars are becoming more realistic.
That would be big, right? The emotional, bringing the emotional dimension into the work. Yeah. And Carlos, is it, do we draw a distinction between virtual reality and augmented reality? Because I know from watching some of the different videos, like Meta, when Meta launched their thing, they were kind of showing, layers. So, I don't know if you could clarify that for the audience as well. Because part of me is thinking, all right, so if I want to get set up with a VR setup, I kind of need like a padded room, or I need like a dedicated space. So if I start walking or playing ping pong, I'm not getting hurt. I guess there's a safety element to how long should you be having a headset on, and is all that light in your eyes, is that okay? And so I'm sure there's a whole safety thing, but I'm curious about the virtual reality versus augmented reality piece.
Now, the more high-end headsets, like for example, the Index, they have cameras on the front. Actually, they all do, even the Oculus Quest 2. So they allow for AR and VR to work together. Now, there's equipment that's solely AR. Even phones do some AR, where you're looking at the phone screen and it implements, that Pokemon Go game, or I think a few years ago, that was a craze, was an example, or a very early example, mind you, of AR integration. But when it comes to the safety, you have boundaries, and you set these boundaries yourself. And of course, I would always recommend, if you're going to do VR standing up and moving around, you want to have at least a 5 meter by 5 meter space in which you can move around and swing your arms freely more than one VR jockey has crashed their controller into a wall because they were in a boxing game fighting Apollo Creed and lost their cool and hit a column or something and smashed their hand with it.
I
And they
think I've
just
seen a YouTube video of that.
yeah. So you can get to that level of excitement. The other thing is there are treadmills for VR. And they're coming down to reasonable prices where you can literally be hooked into your rig, be on this treadmill, move in multi directions without literally moving out of your space. And there's no danger of you smacking into
Like
anything.
Ready Player One, if you saw that movie, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that movie. Of course, that is where the metaverse is. I think that movie is an inspiration for the metaverse. In the sense, we just hope the world doesn't get as ugly as Ready Player One's world.
Yeah, well. Yeah. Well, and that was something we spoke about before we got on the interview here, is that you said that you kind of need to experience it. We were talking about maybe showing some videos on this live stream, but what we decided was you would share with us a few videos, people could check it out. And I think it's something, it's better to be experienced than trying to, we're going to talk about it here, but hopefully we'll have some links for folks as well where they can go check things out. I had a couple of questions. I want to get into what you do, your area of expertise. But one big question I have, I know Adam and I are into blockchain and crypto, and we do stuff there. And there's a lot of discussion in that world about metaverse. And there are, metaverses there. And I think about my daughter who's a Minecraft and Roblox. She's 11, 12 years old. And like they have their versions of the metaverse, and they're all like getting trained for this, right? So I imagine when they're adults, they're just going to be so fluid with this. But we're hearing about Microsoft and obviously Facebook Meta now. The interoperability of this is the question that I want to get to, which is I imagine companies are going to try to jockey to kind of carve out their share of the market of the metaverse. But, I imagine at some point all of this stuff will be interoperable. But, if people want to start plugging into the metaverse now, where do they go?
That's
I imagine there'll be different portals, right, to get there. But,
when it first started, and I would say even up to last year, a lot of the big companies, Oculus, Valve, most of the, Hewlett Packard, most of the companies have come out with good VR headsets. Their approach was to have exclusive titles. In other words, join this experience. It's awesome, but only if you own the Quest, or, join this other experience, but only if you, buy this other equipment. Zuckerberg made a very bold announcement a few years ago saying that, I forget what the experience was, but that would be the last exclusive offered by Oculus or by Meta from then on, and that their applications were going to be interactive. I mentioned before the Valve Index on Steam. And later I'd actually, for people that are interested, we'll get into where do you want to go with this, but where do you want to start? I don't recommend starting with the Valve Index if you're new to VR. I recommend going with an Oculus Quest 2 nowadays. It's cheap. You can get one for under $300. It's standalone, so you don't have to have a $3,000 gaming computer to go along with it. You can connect it to one if you want to go to a higher end VR experience where you're cabled in. But it's definitely the way to go.
You mean you could just buy the headset without a computer and be in the...
Absolutely. With the Meta Quest 2. Yeah. And a lot of these platforms now are allowing for compatibility. I can use my Meta Quest with Steam games now on the Steam platform. Mm-hmm. And sorry, for those of you that don't know, Steam is a large gaming platform, but also has other experiences, and it has thousands of titles. Mm-hmm. But you can use different equipment now. So it's becoming more shareable. Well, of course, one producer will always want to be like the dominant headset maker. They're making the experiences shared across platforms.
But right now, the worlds are kind of isolated. Like you can't move between. It's not one metaverse yet. It's kind of like little worlds here and there popping up, and eventually, maybe we'll be able to move fluidly through these different worlds.
Well, one of the things that's very exciting is Meta just launched Horizon Home Space, and it's on the update 4.1, which comes out this week. And what that does is, Uh, Hard to explain, but when you start off in your Oculus 2 device, you have the, like this launch space, which is like usually looks like a home or a space station, and from there you launch your apps. Well, they finally making it with this update so you can invite friends or other people into this space with you, and you can interact with them and play games there. But from there, you can open portals to all the other experiences that you have within the metaverse. And that is becoming that way. Now, this has been simulated in other experiences such as Outspace or VR Chat, which are other programs but those are all integrated, and experiences that you can jump to portal wise are all part of VR Chat, or they're all part of Outspace. They're built within, same with Engage, which is another one of my favorite ones. But with this one, the idea is you can jump into Lucasfilm's Star Wars world, or you can go into Microsoft Flight Simulator together, or different experiences like that.
Yeah, I think this is a good segue into talking about the team concept in Metaverse, right? So if you this throughout this whole conversation, it's been a very individual experience, right? You mentioned you have to get your own VR headset, you have to kind of get into the world you want and experience it for yourself. But now that we're broaching into the world of bring your friends along, which lends itself right away to, okay, if we can have friends with us, we can now have coworkers with us. And I guess one of the most obvious questions I have is, how do you think Teams would work? And I know there's already an app out there. There's several apps actually, Microsoft, Meta, they're already building it. But have you observed where people are trying to collaborate and trying to work together in the metaverse? What has that been like?
Actually, it's been wonderful over the last 2 years because it's been happening. I mean, we're at this point where over 2021, the AR VR market grew by 92%, which is just a huge leap. And that was one of those, when the pandemic started and people were on lockdown, most people were like, oh no, I'm going to be, isolated. And VR enthusiasts were like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm going to spend more time in the metaverse. And it is a fact that teams started working together in some of these applications, like Dr. Lowe asked earlier about AR, VR integration and the difference. There's one that I really like, and it's by Meta. It's Horizon Workrooms. And it allows you to literally sit down in a, desk room with other peers. You have 8 to 9 people with you from your team, and you each have in front of you your actual desktop screen from your computer at home. Wow. And with the AR integration, you can have your real keyboard and mouse, so you can actually see them while you're in the metaverse and use them like you normally would. Because, one of those things that don't work in previous applications, like you want to type something, it pulls up a virtual keyboard in front of you, and you're sort of still like dot, 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 dot with your fingers, versus actually having your hands on your mechanical keyboard is natural. And you're going to be, so you can take notes quickly, share PowerPoint presentations, do everything else. So it becomes a lot more efficient with the fact that you feel like you're literally a presence sitting in that room. Sure, the avatars are cartoonish, but that also means you don't have to comb your hair or wear makeup or care what you're wearing at all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that's actually, I was going to mention the last statement you made about not needing to put on makeup or wear whatever. There's this big concept of your digital identity. If you're a fan of the Matrix, you know that when Morpheus is talking to Neo, it's like, yeah, this is the way you perceive yourself and how you perceive yourself in this world, not the real world, right? So I'm a huge fan of that too. Just like Krister mentioned, I'm very big into crypto, and right now, very excited about NFTs. Part of that world is finding your own personal identity to represent yourself in a metaverse. So you don't have to show up as Adam Shu. You can show up as an ape or a cat or whatever suits your identity.
Darth Vader is usually my go-to.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge concept because your digital identity right now, people are like, it's just something, but it is very personal. And And I
And a lot
think
of people in these worlds express themselves based on their favorite literature or movie
yeah,
characters, or even something completely creative. I remember this YouTube video that came out a couple of years ago when Zoom trials were happening, and this lawyer was trying to tell people, "I'm not a cat," because
I remember
the
that
AR filter had come out. And obviously, someone in his house likes cats, but you know,
What I'm thinking as you guys are talking is the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion space. This will have
Yes.
huge implications for people can socially construct then any identity they want, right? Whether
Yes.
like even non-human forms, like you're saying, Adam, but you could be any gender, race, age you want in a digital world, right? Which is kind of
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
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 I'm always in perfect shape when I'm in the metaverse, and I have a six-pack.
That's awesome.
It just feels like, because of what you said, Krister, the metaverse provides an opportunity to be more open to letting somebody choose their character versus what,
Expressiveness, yeah.
exactly. So I
Expressiveness,
love that. I love that.
And
So,
you can even choose your voice.
oh, I didn't even
Oh,
think of
wow.
that.
Can
Yeah.
change your voice as well.
So, you know, you can sound like this if you need to.
The Darth Vader, if you want.
Yeah.
So Carlos, I'm imagining the audience, we have a lot of coaches and a lot of team coaches and team practitioners. So is your business primarily around coaching in VR, and is it one-on-one coaching, team coaching? You talk a little bit about kind of like as a practitioner yourself, what's the business around this?
Absolutely. No, and VR work is still probably not over 20% of my business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it requires two to tango, at
Yeah.
least, or many more. So while I'm an enthusiast, that doesn't mean my clients are. And I've been in this field for about 20 years. So my purpose or my job really is I help successful people change behaviors so they can get better results. And I try to do it without their forgetting to enjoy their lives. So that's my overall goal. It's what I've been working on. A lot of my work is very standard in the coaching community. I do one-on-one coaching based on Feedback 360 and different instruments or personality tools. And then I do a lot of stakeholder-centered work. I help them change one or two behaviors. And I also, as you guys know, coaches provide that space where a leader can talk about what keeps them up at night, or share ideas with you that they can't share with others yet. Leadership is a lonely place. Back in 18, I did a study of where I was spending my time. And back then, presential had fallen down to 30%. It was around 60% was already Zoom calls, and more so WebEx and Skype, and that Zoom had not taken the leap
Right.
lately. And the other 10% was VR still. So that wasn't. It has grown, and it really has to do with. And I'll ask when I start working with someone, or I'll notice that they're technologically inclined. I'll ask a coach, "Are you a VR user? Do you want to check this out for a next session?" And that's sort of how we'll segue, but it's not purposely that way. Now, that being said, I've had some fascinating team experiences in VR. Where again, it's been with intent, where I actually proposed an idea. I can't get into the details because, of course, this kind of work is confidential. But I proposed a team building exercise in VR to this board of directors of this one company. They loved the idea. They each purchased an Oculus 2 headset. And we had a specific program that allowed us to all go in as avatars and have a sort of Dungeons and Dragons experience.
Nice.
Now, what does this mean in team building? In Dungeons and Dragons, every character has a specific role. And if you don't do that role well, the entire party, which is what you call the group, died. And we would be in this realistic VR experience. One member, like the CFO, was a healer. The CEO took on a damage role, a tank role, which means he's supposed to hold back the pressure. And we tried to keep it, as realistic. The marketing partner was a mage because they do magic. And and each person had their specific roles. And it was realistic in the sense that these experiences, you have to swing a sword to hit someone, or you have to move your hands in a certain way to launch a fire spell. It's not like you just press a button and it
physical embodiment. Yeah.
Right. And for the archers, you literally have to know how to point and shoot with a bow and arrow. So they're literally, pulling back a string, and there's even a shake or a rumble on the controller in your hand to make it feel like you're really pulling a string back, aiming and taking your shot. So what would happen during this interaction? For them to come together, they started airing their dirty laundry out. And you'd see situations where you'd have someone yell out, "God damn it, Joe, you're moving on without the rest of us, just like you do at work." And they really,
Right.
they really would get excited and into it. And it was so
Who they are, you show up who you are individually and collectively. So you know, so
absolutely. And you have the Leroy Jenkins. That's an old Warcraft reference that some people will get. But the point is, they really came together. And this is the funny part. That project ended about a year ago. And I will still get an invite from time to time from the team saying, "Hey, we're going in. You want to come with us?" And
going
mind
into the
you,
Matrix.
I think the youngest person on the team is maybe 51. So these aren't your millennial classic, that you think, which millennials aren't that young anymore either. I mean,
Right.
let's face
No,
it,
they're old. They're old now compared to the new generation, right?
Welcome to the party.
But usually when you think of a team doing this nowadays, you figure it's millennial and younger generations, but they're not. And I have met tons of VR enthusiasts that are over half a century old or over 60. I'm over half a century.
Yeah, me too.
And heavily into this. I play with a group very similar. I have a Star Wars experience almost every night where I'll fly a TIE fighter or an X-Wing and be in the real world.
Is that what's off your right shoulder there? There looks like a Star Wars.
Oh, that is actually just a lamp, but it's shaped
okay.
Like
okay, I thought it was one of the.
It's a desk lamp. And
okay.
Yes, I'm one of those geek and proud of it, sort of.
That's what your LinkedIn profile says, which we'll share, is that you're a nerd with social skills that helps people get results and enjoy their lives. Executive coach, VR pioneer, philanthropist, and most important job in the world, dad.
That's about right.
Great LinkedIn intro.
That defines me. A gentleman by the name of Brian Underhill, who's the CEO of CoachSource. He's the one that came up with nerd with social skills. And it was many, many years ago at a conference we were together, and he looked at me and said, "You're a nerd with social skills." So that's sort of how that sort of stayed with me. I like that statement. But it's funny. My daughter the other day was called a nerd at school. And you know what I loved about it? She turned around to the person and said, "I prefer the term smarter than you."
Wow.
It's now being a nerd is a badge of honor, right? I think that's kind of the world we're moving into. Adam, I don't know if you have any other major questions, but I think to summarize for me, Carlos, what I'm kind of hearing and taking away from this is that the metaverse is here. It's still the early days and it's going to keep evolving, but it has matured enough now that actually it's probably time to start getting in and plugging in and helping evolve it, right? Especially, I think, bringing this to enterprises. And we've all been primed, especially over COVID. What you were saying, using WebEx, and I was using Adobe Connect, and it was really clunky 10 years ago, but we've all been on that progression. So this is where we're headed. So, you're either going to get in sooner or later. Probably now is a good time to get in, is my thinking. And it's still pretty early days, but it sounds like your amount of business in this is slowly growing, the percentage. And maybe at some point there's a tipping point where it really flips over, but it really opens up a whole nother level of possibilities and creativity. I've been getting excited. I've been starting to go back and seeing teams in person, but even the ones where we do in person, Zoom with Mural or Miro is still is part of the life now, but I'm imagining that will give way to the metaverse, and maybe we will still do things in person, but the online stuff will just get more dynamic because it's still pretty
integrated. I'm not sure if you realize this, but Zoom launched a whiteboard feature just a month ago. Works very much like Miro. You can put Post-its on it and draw.
Well, they have all these integrations of apps, right? You can have Mural and Miro integrated directly into it, but I was going
to say that the one thing thinking about the audience here is not, I'm sure some of them are probably going to get excited listening to this and watching us talk about it. They're probably thinking, how do I get started? That's probably the most obvious. Do I now need to go out and buy a pair of Oculus? Is now a good time to do it, and things like that? And because there is an investment in it, right? So how would you help somebody who's new to it? How would they begin?
I would honestly say that the best way to go right now is with the Oculus Quest 2 or Meta Quest 2. I think it's changed. Its name keeps on changing. So it's under, I think it's like $290. I'm not sure, but something like that. You can go pick one up at Target or Walmart or order it directly from the store. Yeah. They're available. They do sell out fast whenever they come out, but especially during the pandemic, there was a big rush for them and they sold out. But definitely go there. The next thing that's interesting, it's Horizon is this new world that Meta's creating, and it's still not fully functional, which is a perfect time to get in there. If you're interested in investing in the future, eventually you could own a store in Horizon in this world where people visit, or you could have your own little office where you do coaching sessions and people can drop in or sit in on you or different. So this is the moment to start looking at those possibilities. I'm going to put some links to these that later you can share, but there's Outspace VR, Engage VR. They all offer these wonderful work up to large group experiences. I've given lectures to over 300 people at once from different parts of the world in VR in an actual lecture hall with 3D spatial sound, which means that when someone's sitting to your right and they ask a question, you hear it coming from the right place and you look at them, make eye contact with that person, and you interact with them like you would be in a real lecture hall normally. So it's a good time. I would say start with that one because you don't need to have, for example, I love the Valve Index. It's another headset I have, but it's cost $1,000. I'm running high-end gaming graphics adapter and an Alienware desktop in order to manage it at full. So you're looking at $4,000 investment, which is a bit much to get started if you're going to go for that. But with that Meta Quest 2, under $300, you're in. All you need is some space, a good Wi-Fi connection, and you're good to go.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I imagine the cost will come down as the technology advances and more people adopt, right? The cost curve will come down.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I think you've answered all of my questions. Krista, I don't know if you have any more, but thank you, Carlos, for just sharing your wealth of knowledge with us and giving us, I guess, a taste of what's to come. I'm very excited. I think last time I spoke with you, I'm probably going to invest in a VR headset soon myself and try to get into understanding what that world is like. Yeah. And I think your insight about getting in now because we are early is probably a great insight as well, because anytime you get in early on anything, you all of a sudden become the expert. So for our coaching community, those that want to kind of dip their toe in, they might want to think about that as well. I certainly am. I would love to lead groups and have group conversations, on the planet of Mars, like you said. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for the better of a year, looking at the sets, waiting to see when the version 3 of the Oculus comes out or whatever, but maybe I'll just go with the 2 right now. But I think this episode is going to push me over now. This is the tipping point. So it's time to dive in, and we'll maybe see you in there, Carlos. But I think for the audience members, we do have, individual coaches out there and team coaches, but we do have enterprise listeners from companies and stuff. So do you offer services if people want to connect with you? Again, we'll put your LinkedIn profile. If you prefer, they contact you another way, feel free to share your email or whatever the best contact is, or they can connect with you through LinkedIn. But you provide services. So if people are interested to learn more for individuals and teams, or what's the portfolio you offer in this space around coaching with VR?
Both. It's individuals and teams. Teams can be more exciting. Coaching is very similar to the coaching we've always done, just more interactive and sometimes with more escapism or more fun to the experience. Yeah. And by the way, if you guys do get your headsets, let me know. I'd be happy to give you a tour.
Well, I think we'll take you up on that. I think you've got two ready customers here for that. So Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, let's give it to you, Carlos. Any final thoughts here before we start to wrap up today's episode? And it's been awesome having you on, and I hope this is the beginning of multiple touch points with you, and always welcome you back onto the show as the space evolves, and maybe we can have more conversations. But yeah.
No, just from my perspective, greetings again from Lima, Peru to everyone. I hope that our conversation has at least piqued your curiosity in the very least. And I look forward to seeing everyone in the metaverse, because it can be our new world too.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, great. Have a great day. I know it's winter time down there where you are, Carlos. Adam and I are sweating it out in the United States here in the summer, but that makes it all interesting. And maybe in the metaverse, we can kind of be in whatever weather we want, at least to some dimensions of the senses. But have a great rest of your week, and we're going to be in touch, and we're looking forward to getting this out to the audience and really hearing from the listeners what this is, how it's resonating with them. And I imagine this may lead to a number of people adopting, getting in. So thank you so much for your generosity today.
Thank you. Maybe you have a wonderful week as well.
Thank you very much, Carlos.